Hi, welcome to another editorial board endorsement interview with the Times Editorial Board. We've got two candidates for state representative in the 11th district. It's an open seat. We have Mike Aylesworth, the Republican, and Jim Metro, the Democrat. Welcome to both of you. I'm Doug Ross, editorial page editor at the Times. Also in the room we have Bob Heiss, editor, and Brian Vernellis, videographer. Well, welcome to both of you. Let's begin with a real quick description of who you are and what prepared you for this. Jim?
Thank you. Thank you for letting me join. Hello, Times readers and viewers. I think the big thing about this House district is it's a new district created in 2012 after the census and the redistricting, and it became open. And it was really a chance for some new people to step up and get involved with all of our state legislation. And basically, I felt the time was right to step forward and give it a try. So, brings us here today.
Okay, Mike?
My experience in the back, in the history, I think, Doug, you're familiar with a lot of it. I served a couple of terms as a county commissioner in Porter County. I have lived in Boone Township of Porter County my entire life. I also served on the county council over there. I served as Republican county chairman in 2 different stints for a total of about 20 years. I helped a lot of candidates through the process. I took a job after I retired from my farm in 2003. I took a job in the Daniels administration, and I was the director of the South Bend office, Northern Field office of IDEM, the Indiana Department of Environmental Management. And I didn't know, of course, that Rick Niemeyer was going to run for Sue Lansky's seat, because she just recently had announced that she wasn't running again because of health issues. So when Rick announced, I thought this would be a good opportunity for me. So I thought about it and jumped into the race.
Okay. Well, one of the questions everybody's asking us, and I'm sure you, is job creation, and what do you do? Mike?
Well, job creation is a very difficult one, but nonetheless, it's doable. We have to work closely with the economic development people in the various communities, make sure that the Chambers of Commerce or Economic Development Commissions are on board with making their communities very presentable. One of the big things I know I learned in my years of both county government and working for the state is when employers come into communities, they look at the quality of life, the total picture. It's not just a tax break. It's not just one thing or another. They look at school systems. They look at how the community presents itself, the main street of the community, the general feeling as you come into a community. It's residential areas, how they look. It's a whole package, and that's what we have to work with different communities to make sure that package is good for economic development.
Okay. Jim?
I think that first, government really doesn't create the jobs. We can encourage, set the best environment to bring business and help current businesses expand. I think first we should identify what works and what our workforce is in place and is a positive on the work environment. Things like have been hot topics, common wage law. I think a lot of the working middle class would be hurt by that. I don't think that's something we should bring in. And we need to just encourage the environment with tax credits for hiring new employees, even better geared towards helping our veterans. You hire a veteran, we'll give you a tax credit. Then it's something that doesn't have to be figured or balanced into the budget, where it's a cut and we have to figure out how to make it up somewhere else. So if we just give at a state level, some of these businesses a nice perk of tax credit, hiring Hoosiers, hiring veterans. Just get that mindset, see what works, and have an encouraging environment to spur new business.
Okay. The kind of an extension of that is the infrastructure. As you know, NDOT says we're getting farther and farther behind with the available funding. So what do you do, Jim?
What do we do with the roads? Well, I think everybody deserves with their tax dollar to keep as many roads public as we can. I mean, we built this great infrastructure years and years ago from nothing, and now we just have to tackle the problems of maintaining it. Like this Klein Avenue Bridge, you know, that's a gateway for working men and women to get up to the mills, to get up to BP, to get up to Chicago for all the commuters. I think these things need to be identified, see what the worst infrastructure roads and main thoroughfares are, and come up with a plan to really narrow down and fix some of these things. It seems like a milestone to overcome them, but to truly improve public transportation and our infrastructure, which will create jobs with decent living wages and disposable economy where people can work, spend money, raise a family. It's just all intertwined. But I think that's a big thing with the budget in the roads and infrastructure.
Okay, Mike?
Yeah, and the local communities certainly have a big challenge with the steady income or slightly declining income that comes from road use taxes. And making that fit into today's picture of maintaining bridges and highways is very daunting and very challenging. The one thing that I would emphasize is we really need to be aware of the changing way that we can attack that through using better infrastructure technology and research. There are many things that can be done in road improvements now that weren't available a few years ago at a little bit more reasonable cost. INDOT also has to look inside itself and go through the Kaizen process of the Japanese technology of making improvements on a continuous basis to see what doesn't work for them, what does work, use the pots of money that do work and enlarge them, and do away with the parts of INDOT that is inefficient. It's a constant process of efficiency study. So it's a challenge, but we'll do the best we can.
So specifically, do we need to generate more money than we already are? And if so, how do we do it? Mike?
Well, obviously, anybody would say that the best answer is to raise taxes, but I'm very much against that unless a real reason can be shown a need for that. The taxpayers are whacked enough as it is, whether it's a road use tax, or whether it's property taxes, whether it's sales taxes. So I think government needs to be leaner and more efficient and use its ability to study the issues and find the best opportunities to spend its money wisely. Sometimes in the past, I don't think INDOT or some of the communities that use public transportation money or private money use it wisely. They need to use it better.
Okay. Jim?
I agree to the fact that I don't think we need to raise taxes. We have to, like I do in my business, we have to work within our means and what is budgeted and not raise and put any more taxes strapped on the people's back. We just need to focus on what money we have to work with, possibly some simple things we could do to increase a little bit of sales revenue. I know from time to time it's tough to forecast into the future 2 years with this budget and see what sales revenue and taxes are going to be. But some little things, I live pretty close to the border of Illinois, some other areas over South Bend that are close to the Michigan border. You know how many years people run on Sundays across the line and they're buying beer and alcohol, and you know we're losing all that. We could generate revenue here in Indiana on Sundays. So just simple things we need to look at and say, hey, is that such a bad thing that we can't do it anymore? Is make a little more sales tax revenue on Sundays? For our people that they're going to run across the line and get it anyways, why shouldn't Indiana be getting some of those benefits?
Okay, so you'd want Sunday sales?
I think it needs to be looked at. If it's a good revenue source, you know, all the bordering states are. Why hasn't Indiana made that step? I think it definitely needs to be addressed.
Okay, Mike?
I don't know that we need to make any changes in the existing liquor laws. I'd have to see studies that show that would be an appreciable increase in income in the sales tax revenue before I would think about voting for it. But I'm genuinely happy with the way things are.
Okay. One of the things that's being discussed is the decline of the casino industry in Indiana. You know, of course, you know, we're losing jobs and there's increasing competition and all this. So what do you do? Jim?
Well, I think a lot of it is to some of the surrounding states that are increasing their casino action and in their legislation trying to make more revenue for their state. But we just need to look at what's in place. If we would need to modernize some of them or bring them together and make more of a bigger casino, and I know that revenue generated is very helpful to a lot of communities. All get their chunk in this area. So I think we need to keep them, but we just need to take a look and see what we have to do to modernize or make it more enticing for these bordering states that are doing more land-based casinos versus the gambling boats. So make ours the most enticing to our residents and other residents to bring them over here and keep our revenues up on the gambling.
Okay, Mike?
Well, I think the shine is off the ornament, so to speak, on casino gaming, and it's going to be a very difficult challenge to keep the revenue flowing up to past standards, because as Illinois and Michigan and Ohio and Kentucky have all built casinos close to the state lines, our revenues have declined. I think the one little star in all this is down at the resort at French Lick. I think that one casino's doing all right, but it's a multifaceted operation, and perhaps our casinos need to think in a little bit broader terms to get people to come in. Just to go in and gamble, it's lost its luster as opposed to when it was first enacted a dozen years ago or so. So it's a daunting challenge. There's no easy solution. And Jim is right. The local communities, they depend on that gate revenue for lots of things. So I would be opposed to taking that off of there.
Okay. What do you think of land-based casinos, Mike?
Land-based casino, I've never had a big problem with land-based casinos as opposed to the ones that have to be floating. I thought it was all sort of a charade anyway. They dug a big white spot in Trail Creek in Michigan City or whatever, you know, and say it was water-based. They actually had to start the engines and pretend it was going out, you know, away from the shore and then come back. I thought that was sort of a silly governmental rule. I have no problem with the land-based casino, but I don't think the state should be in the business of guaranteeing its success. If a private entity wants to come in like somebody from Las Vegas or Atlantic City and build a land-based casino, they should do it on their own hook. And we as the state would get our share of the taxes on that.
Okay.
I would be for. I know the push has been in Gary to, I think, consolidate their two boats and make it in the Buffington Harbor and make it into one bigger land-based casino. And back to the previous question, I think if it does work, if we bring the people back and it's very popular and brings more revenue for the area, it'll create some jobs during that construction period. I think that's a good step if that's what we need to do to bring the gambling back up in Gary. So I have no problems with switching over to a land-based casino.
Okay. One of the things that kind of happened after, you know, in the last couple of years is the tension between the superintendent of public instruction and the State Board of Education. Mm-hmm. You know, the Center for Education and Career Innovation, it was created after the last budget was adopted. Do you know, would you want to keep that in the budget, or you know, how do you bring the board and the superintendent back together?
Well, I think, and I always have thought for quite some time, that the superintendent of public instruction should be appointed by the governor, who after all appoints the Board of Education anyway, and it would resolve most of the issues. However, I don't think that the law should be changed during the tenure of the existing superintendent. That's not fair to her or to anyone that would hold that office. It would have to be done in the future. That's one of the few state offices that is not a constitutional office. It's a legislative created office. And I think it should be more an arm of the governor's cabinet, so you don't have the conflicts, because I feel bad for the children of the state of Indiana, because it detracts from the main mission of the Department of Education. That's to educate our kids. There's too much wrangling going on, too much newspaper time devoted to the wrangle rather than solving the educational issues that are before us. So that's my opinion anyway.
Okay.
I truly believe that the governor, and they always speak of being fiscal conservative, and he has appointed a board to duplicate what the Board of Education is supposed to be doing. We, the people of Indiana, elected Glenda Ritz as the state superintendent, and they are not letting her do her job. And we are power struggling and fighting when the real focus should be what's best for the kids and working towards better educators. So that's a real problem down there that should not be. The fight is happening, and it should not be over the power of the governor versus the superintendent and the board. It should be, let's all work together for the kids, for education, for the schools, the teachers. They've all been power struggling, and they need to work together, and whatever avenue that has to happen. I mean, that has been on the ballot for a lot of years, school superintendent. It seems like the last election cycle was another. We were talking about Tony Bennett. So I think that is an elected position by the people, and she should be able to run her office.
Okay. How would you improve the schools?
Well, I think the school funding formula needs to be reopened and examined, because over the past decade or 15 years, school funding, although in current dollars it's stayed rather leveled, if not crept up, but when you factor in inflation and the increased costs of operating schools, electricity, employees, health insurance, all that kind of things, really money has decreased to the schools. And I think the House of Representatives, the Speaker of the House, just spoke to that. And in fact, I saw him a couple nights ago in Indianapolis, and the Speaker and many of us are well aware that we need to re-examine exactly what the state does and does not do, because there's not a level playing field with all the schools in the state of Indiana, and that whole thing, the funding issue, needs to be examined. And one of my pet peeves has always been textbook rentals. I think textbook rentals should be paid for at least 50% by the state of Indiana, because if you have a family of 4 and you're not on textbook assistance, it's quite an onerous cost at the beginning of a school year. And working men and women, I come out of a farm community. We're all working men and women. It's very challenging. All of a sudden in August, September, you got to come up with $400 or $500 on top of school clothes and everything else that goes with the starting program. So my goal would be, as a legislator, to work toward a 50% match for textbooks, rentals that pick up that cost, so it's only half as much. And eventually, I'd like to see it wither away. I think we're less than a dozen states that still have that concept. So that's where I'm headed.
Okay.
I think that there is some problems with the funding formula. A lot of schools, there was just an article, I believe in the Times, about Tri Creek, what they're going to lose in revenue over the next 5 years. So there is something wrong with the formula if some school corporations are getting that kind of deficit and others aren't. That formula does need to be looked at again. And I think back to the Common Core, that needs to be re-evaluated to the fact that I like the plan that I have a son right now in 2nd grade, and if I would move because of work, because of family scenario, to the state of Ohio, where I could reinsert him in the 2nd grade in Ohio, and he would be able to pick right up and be pretty close to the curriculum he was getting here. But I think the think tank entrepreneurs, they started with this Common Core, that they needed to involve more educators, and I think we should let some of our better teachers look into the Common Core and kind of rewrite it more special to Indiana, what we need for our students and our teachers. And we also need to be a little nicer and give some rights back to our teachers. They were put through the ringer here a couple of years ago with losing their collective bargaining, and if we're not paying our teachers well, they're going to go look for other careers with their education. Well, I know I want some of the best teachers educating and teaching my children. So I think we need to be more open and help our teachers more. That will help teach the children better.
Okay, Bob?
Well, you both have been talking to voters for quite a while. You had a contested primary. And, now, what are you hearing? What is the top? Is it education, or what are they telling you that if you go to Indianapolis, this is what you should be working on? Jim?
The top three, which I've pretty much focused on all my mailers, flyers, information about me, and I've been pretty much actively campaigning since the primary in February, is education, like we've talked about here today. That's a big priority on people's minds. Roads, infrastructure improvement, bridges, the pothole repairs for this terrible winter we had. That's number one thing. I know I lost the hubcap on one of my one-ton work trucks. We've got some real serious road issues that we need to address. And then finally, the other hot topic that was really spoke on well, I attended a couple Memorial Day services, and the consideration for our veterans. I came up with a few ideas and initiatives for helping our veterans for their service to their country here in the state of Indiana. All of our parks, we should be giving free admissions to our veterans. Hunting and fishing licenses. You put your life on the line for our country, and you want to enjoy our state natural resources. You want to hunt and fish. The state of Indiana should be doing complimentary things to help. We don't take enough time to support our veterans these days. Those are basically the most talked about topics I'm hearing door-to-door campaigning.
Okay.
Yes, education I think is number one. Jobs, economic development, economic opportunity, continued growth, encouraging growth in communities, probably number two. And then transportation infrastructure support. I remember in my days as a county commissioner, people want out of their government basically a few things. One is the potholes fixed and the roads plowed. The garbage picked up, but that's not our issue, okay? Those are the kinds of things they want. And I guess I would comment on the veterans issue. At my last Legion meeting that I attended as a veteran, one of the fellows mentioned it would really be nice if the state of Indiana didn't tax veterans' disability benefits. He's a disabled veteran from Bosnia, campaign, and Desert Storm, and he was exposed to sarin gas, and he's got nerve damage and gradually losing the use of his limbs. And he gets disability benefits. The state taxes those benefits, and I think for something like that, for a guy that's had that great sacrifice to our country, that shouldn't be taxed. So I would move that forward as a veteran.
Okay. One of the things we've been asking candidates is, what do you think of the perception that Northwest Indiana isn't getting its fair share from the legislature? Do you see that as an accurate perspective, Mike?
It's always been the perspective for those of us that live in Northwest Indiana, because we don't get much media from the rest of Indiana. We read more about the governor's foibles in Illinois than we ever hear about Indianapolis and Indiana news. So the perception is out there, because we don't get that news, that we're forgotten by Indianapolis. But I think Governor Daniels and the RDA turned that around. They distinctly put a lot of money in the Northwest Indiana, and the RDA is very transparent. The management has given some wonderful grants to communities from Whiting to Valparaiso to LaPorte, Michigan City, for worthwhile projects to put people to work, to make our infrastructure better, to make our parks and public places better. So I think it's worked very well. So I don't think there's near the amount of decline in attention from Indianapolis as people might think there is. And I want to see the RDA extended and continued.
Okay.
I think it's improved a little, but I still don't think we are due for the population. You know, the second biggest county in Indiana. I think back to the Klein Avenue Bridge. If that was in Indianapolis, to a major arterial somewhere else, that would be fixed. We're still waiting years and years. Nothing's happening with this Klein Avenue, and I just go back to the education topic. Couple years ago, they were cutting money. Granted, there were some shortfalls in the budget. They were cutting Indiana's education out of the budget, and they approved a renovation of Indianapolis sports stadiums for help with the tourism. And I just shook my head when I read that. I think that's a disservice to managing the people's money. We needed things up here, or it could have been roads or bridges in any other part of the state of Indiana, but to pull money out of the education budget and redo sports stadiums in Indianapolis, that's shame on our legislators for doing that.
Mike already said he wants the RDA reauthorized.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
Yes, I think the RDA is good in concept as a collaborative effort to regionalize leaders from different communities in the area. I think it is a good thing. I'll put our thinking caps on, get together, come up with ideas that will help and support each other. Yes.
Okay. Do you have other questions?
I guess the question we always ask is what is different about you? You know, what differs here and points in your direction for this seat? I mean, evaluate how you stand out more than your opponent.
I guess I would say my experience and ability to work with people. I have so many years of contacts in Indianapolis, and I think I can work very well with my friends in the legislature who are in the majority to be very effective. So I think that's a big plus for my candidacy.
Okay, Jeff?
Well, I think that is exactly what we don't need. We have a whole supermajority chamber full of old experienced politicians. I think I have some fight in the game. I am mid-40s, working middle class. I own a business. I employ people. I get it from all spectrums, from the business end, from the employer end. I have children in the school system, so I am knee-deep in this education problem and experience firsthand. So I can relate to all the people in the district that are in the same working middle-class family. I try and take care of, help with your parents, try to get the kids to get out of college and can't find a good job yet. I think I can represent what the people's real needs in this generation is right now and take it down to Indianapolis and fight for what's most important and people are having problems with.
Okay. Well, I'm afraid that's all the time we have with this editorial board endorsement interview. Thank you for viewing.